Conspiracies and Crosshairs. Denton hammered his fist on the rusty security door, the high carbon steel of his prosthetic clanging off the old, tarnished metal. The dingy corridor rang with the sound, but nobody so much as poked their heads out to look. The sounds of violence were common in a crumbling neighborhood like this, and everybody had plenty of their own problems without sticking their nose into the neighbor's business. Denton listened, straining his ears to hear any sound over the thunder of his pounding heart. He'd spent too long behind a desk to pound up the back stairs of an old blockhouse tower, especially with the added weight of his bionic arm and leg. "Open up," Denton snarled, hitting the reinforced door just above the lock. The door didn't budge, but the red eye of a camera in a cage over the door flickered to life, blinking down at him.
"What's your glitch, troll?"
A voice asked through a half-busted speaker behind a metal cage.
"Spaz out, or I'll get security on your ass."
Denton didn't say anything. He just unclipped his badge from his belt and held it up in one hand right in front of the camera. The mechanism whirred, bringing it into focus. The mic went silent, as if whoever was on the other end was thinking.
"You got a warrant to go with that tin shield?"
The voice on the intercom asked. "This goes one of two ways," Denton said, clipping his badge back in place. "You open that door, and we have ourselves a nice, private chat when nobody hears the details of what happens. Or I get on the horn, rouse the DA out of bed, and get her all kinds of pissed that you made her get involved. It's up to you, Simon." This time the pause was even longer. Denton was just about to pull out his mobile and call it in when he heard the loud buzz of the door's lock opening. He yanked it open, stepping through with one hand near his weapon as he scanned the room. The place was close and cramped, made even worse by a small mountain of takeout boxes along one wall. The rest of the space was dedicated to a horseshoe-shaped desk that held half a dozen humming pieces of computer equipment. Seated at the desk in a suspension rig, images flashing across his jack visor, was a skinny young man in a sleeveless shirt that somehow made him look even thinner than he was. His fingers danced over various keys, the clacking rhythm filling the small space like a technological heartbeat. "Didn't expect a visit from Iron Jack Denton himself," Simon said, tapping a button on the side of his goggles. "What do you want?" "Been a long time since anybody called me that," Denton said. He fished out a data drive from his pocket and held it out to the young man. "I want you to tell me what this is." "It's a thumb drive," Simon Baracus said without missing a beat. "Oldies like you use them to store your vacation pics and dirty videos because you don't trust off-site storage." "Real funny, wise ass," Denton said, stepping forward and laying the drive on the desk in front of the net diver. "I want you to tell me about what's on it. You give me the answers I need, I'll go on about my night, and forget that the infamous Simon Says lives in this run-down hole in the middle of Rat Towers." Simon sniffed, his nose wrinkling like what Denton proposed smelled worse than the garbage stacked against the near wall. After a long pause, though, he snatched up the drive and popped it into a burner port. It hummed, the red light going green as the virus check cleared. Simon clacked a few keys, muttering to himself as he opened the display. A moment later, his hands froze, and the sneer melted off his face. "What is this?" Simon asked, the haughty tone gone from his voice. "Where did you get this?" "Oh, I'm sure you could find it if you really put your mind to it," Denton said, folding his arms over his chest. "Now go on, smart guy. Tell me what I'm looking at." Simon's fingers flew over the keys and the screens all around him flashed, bringing up chat logs, web searches, and forum posts as his programs scoured the networks in search of answers. A bead of sweat ran down the side of his face from under his visor, and he turned his head from side to side, glancing at the extended virtual display in front of his gaze. He licked his lips and sniffed in a way that suggested to Denton that the hacker was riding on something, but he didn't want to take another hit of his drug of choice in front of a badge.
That's a Raptor X9 stealth suit,
Simon said, tapping one of the touch screens and throwing images and stat blocks onto the data stick.
They're not available to the civilian population at large. They're government produced, no corporate contract. The body armor will stand up to basically any kind of small arms, and the contours and materials make it nearly impossible to pick up with sophisticated imaging systems and electronic signatures. Only reason the shot you got even exists is the camera is older than my Nana.
What else? Denton grunted.
The weapon in the figure's hands is the profile of a Manticore 2.4,
Simon said, his hands a blur as he continued his analysis.
Its standard chamber is a 7.62mm, but it has a unique pin mechanism that adjusts to the caliber of a variety of different round sizes. You can barely see the ammunition selector down in this pick.
That all? Denton demanded. The net diver pushed the visor up over his head and stared at Denton. The Ocuspec implants that had replaced Simon's eyes whirred and shifted, focusing as he adjusted to the ambient light of the room outside of the bubble of his network connection. He reached down and popped a top on something that smelled like artificial sweetener, and which boasted a caffeine count high enough to kill most mid-sized domestic animals.
That's all,
he said, tugging out the data drive and throwing it toward Denton. Simon raised the can to his lips and took a long drink.
You want my advice, though? Burn that pick and pretend you never saw it. Anyone with that kind of fit, complete with accessories, isn't somebody you want to screw with.
Sure, Denton said, tucking the drive away in his pocket. Without another word, he turned and left the concrete box, making his way toward the stairs. Simon tracked the detective's progress on the building's cameras, waiting until he was sure Denton was leaving before he pulled his visor back on.
Not good,
he said, bringing up a secure login to a hidden corner of the network. He queued up a quick message to the dead drop and included a link to the hidden tracking program he'd installed on Denton's drive before giving it back to him. The tracker wouldn't be useful now, but whenever the detective left it plugged into the network, it would send up a beacon to anyone who had the code, telling them exactly where he was. Simon didn't know the name or face of whoever the hell was behind the blacked-out helmet, and he didn't want to know. But the Angel of Death had told Simon to keep an eye out for anyone digging too deep into what he was doing, and the last thing Simon wanted to do was put a target on his own back while this spook was still out there, cleaning house. Thank you for listening to this latest audio drama and the third in the Cyberpunk Investigation series. Conspiracies and Crosshairs is the introductory story for 100 rumor mongers and information brokers from Azukail Games, a link to which can be found in the video description below. If you enjoyed this story and you want to help us keep telling tales just like this, make sure to like, subscribe, and share the story around so that more people can hear it and we can keep producing content like this for listeners just like you.